Awooga, awooga, alarms going off. This is an Old Warlock gaming service announcement. That's right, we've got another one. The Deck of Contradiction Kickstarter.
You've never heard of that, have you?
No, you haven't. It's brand new. The Deck of Contradiction Kickstarter is starting.
We say it all the time.
On February 9th. February 9th, flashing letters. Boop, boop, boop.
February 9th, 2024.
February 9th, 2024 is when the Kickstarter
at this in 2025.
is launching for our brand new supplement that we have put together. We think you guys are going to love it. And without any further ado, here's the video. Go check that out.
But go check out, go to Kickstarter. The link will be in the description. Go to Kickstarter and you too can own the Deck of Contradiction.
Yes, please go look.
If you want to.
But anyway, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. You know, sometimes here at the Old Warlock,
I don't.
we get to talking about some pretty serious subject matter, right? Some pretty serious material.
No.
And you know, sometimes when you get to talking about these serious things, you just need some, what would it be? Some kind of relief.
I bet you're going to say comic relief.
Comic relief?
Oh, brother. This is not where we wanted to go. I'm sorry.
Comic relief! Here we go! Before we get too deep into the video, I would like to take a moment and I would like to point out to all of our followers that you've never seen this shirt before. Brand new shirt, okay? So for all of you out there who've been hating on my choice of the same 4 shirts.
4?
Same
being pretty generous.
Same 2 or 3 shirts that I wear every time we record these videos, okay? You know, secret's out. We record multiple videos at the same time, so I'm wearing the same shirt, and a lot of them. You've never seen this one before, so I guess enjoy it while it lasts before I bring the Patagonia one out again.
Yeah, I mean, he's got this cycle. He did his laundry, so now he has 3 clean shirts that he could use for
Exactly.
videos, yeah.
I did it just so you guys would hopefully appreciate it. But that's not why you're here.
That's not why you're here.
No.
It's not why we're here.
No. We are all here to learn about the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons comic books. Isn't that right?
Yes, that is why we're here today. A lot of people, many people, even old school people, grognards like me, do not know that TSR, back in the late 80s, created an Advanced Dungeons & Dragons comic book with the help of DC.
Yeah.
And being who I am, I have a complete set of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons comic book. It just
shocking, right?
It just sounds sadder and sadder every time.
Oh, stop it.
No, I take pride in my volumes of D&D materials that I have sequestered around the house.
As you should.
But yes, there was an Advanced Dungeons & Dragons comic book.
Comic book series.
Comic book series. It ran for 36 issues, essentially 3 years, from 88 to 91, 1988 to 1991.
Yep. And
it's actually, we wanted to just take a quick look at it and, you know, explain some of the things that are in it. These are actually still readily available on eBay. They are not terribly popular. I think it's actually almost like a niche D&D souvenir market that hasn't been tapped into. So you can find these. Of course, by the time this video is over, they will be selling for huge sums of money.
Community will buy all of them up.
Yeah, all 5 of you. Now, initially, it was this whole Advanced Dungeons & Dragons comic book thing was a good idea. They were trying to expand their audience, which is, you know, this is a perfect vehicle to do it. Comic books were running really, really powerfully back in the late 80s. From the 80s all the way into the 90s. They were really popular. And the concept of tapping into that market with a comic book about AD&D was really actually a pretty good one. Especially because historically, you know, there's a lot of overlay and interest anyway. Right. So again, working with DC, they came out with this comic book series in 1988. The comics themselves were, in terms of the way they look, in terms of the way they read, the artwork in them is actually pretty good. I mean, it's standard stuff for that late 80s, that mid 80s to mid 90s style.
We'll probably throw up some images so you guys can.
Yeah, I'll try and find some. I'll take some photographs or something and throw them up. But the comic book artwork is pretty darn good. The storylines are actually pretty good as well. For the most part, they did 4-issue story arcs, and it was set in AD&D campaign worlds. Waterdeep ends up taking a kind of a major role in some of these as the background setting. The stories were okay, the story arcs were okay, the settings were good. The writing, not the best that I've ever seen in terms of the actual dialogue that's taking place between characters. I think part of that was because they were really trying to work Dungeons and Dragons things into the text. So, I will take my staff of withering and I will strike them, and then they had something usually in the back of the book that told you what a staff of withering was. They also had and they also had information about the characters, what their strengths and weaknesses were. As per AD&D, they had that in the back of the book as well.
Which in theory is really cool.
It is. It's just that it kind of made for stilted dialogue it's a comic book. Yeah, dialogue's going to be stilted, but it made some awkward dialogue in the comic books because of the way they were trying to shoehorn in some of that information.
When maybe the reason for them existing is not necessarily for the art of the comic book, but instead as an advertising stream. Basically, for something else.
Right. And it shows that this
of course.
This whole thing shows of trying to, hey, in D&D you get to have this and this, and here's how you use this various thing.
Yeah.
These various things. That really becomes apparent.
You can say the same thing about like the D&D TV show.
Exactly.
It's the same kind of feel if you've ever watched those. I love it. But it's still very, I'm going to use my rope of whatever to do, and so you're kind of walking this weird line.
But between telling a story and talking about a product.
Yeah.
Anyway, I actually enjoy these. They're something they're fun to read. I think that at the time, if you were not a Dungeons and Dragons person, you may not have enjoyed these all that much. But as an AD&D player, these are actually really cool to me.
Yeah.
Now, the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons comic book, it ran, like I said, from 88 to 91. It sold about on the same level as Wonder Woman comics for DC. It did okay.
So not bad.
I want to say that it was in, like the top 100, 150 comics that were being created, maybe in the top 100. It sold well enough for DC to say, yeah, this is a profitable venture for us. We're going to keep on doing it. But what had to happen? Why were there only 36 issues?
Let's pause so you guys can leave your guesses down below in the comments.
Sure.
Okay.
So, I have come up with a theory that anyone who owns the intellectual property rights to Dungeons and Dragons is cursed.
Cursed?
Cursed. Now, what do I mean when I say that people who own the intellectual property rights to Dungeons & Dragons are cursed? Well, it seems to me that every time someone is the owner of the intellectual property of D&D, they end up having a real problem with understanding a good thing when they have it. To me, it's a situation where you're shooting your cow in order to get steak and not remembering where the milk's coming from, okay? You can use that if you want.
Don't ever use that.
What I'm trying to get at is that the people who own D&D, they always seem to try and squeeze every last dime out of it that they can in the short term, and they don't really keep an eye on what they have currently and how that can evolve on its own to be beneficial and positive and financially sound in the long term.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Lorraine Williams and TSR at that time, they ended up screwing it up. What happened was, like we said, the comic book was running fairly well. It was making a profit, and the long-term goal should have been to increase the audience of people who are going to buy Dungeons & Dragons products,
Sure.
not increase the number of people who are going to buy Dungeons & Dragons comic books. It was a marketing tool. But as they always do, TSR decided, I bet we could make even more money off this than we can, and we should do it right now. And they decided to go into the comic book industry themselves.
Because who needs DC?
Exactly.
Right?
And they had already licensed all of their D&D stuff to DC, so they couldn't use that. So they came up with a bunch of other things that they decided to create comic books for. Well, the problem is TSR knew nothing about comic book marketing. They knew nothing about the comic book market itself.
They're a games company.
Exactly. They're a gaming company, and they thought that they could do it because how hard could it actually be? Well, apparently it really was. DC got wind of the idea that TSR was deciding to go into the comic book market, comic book industry in direct direct competition with DC. Well, guess what? DC got mad and said, "Forget it, guys. We're done with your stupid comic. We're just take it and go home."
I don't even know if it would be anger.
No,
I think it's probably just more okay.
Well, and you almost have to imagine some, sitting around a boardroom, final item of business. Oh, and by the way, TSR is going to go into competition with us for comic books. Really? Okay, cancel the contract. I mean, I almost see it as being, we're talking DC, and then we're talking TSR.
Yeah.
And so I really see this as, at the end of the day, it was just a dumb move on TSR's part because they lost the opportunity to expand their audience much earlier than it ended up being expanded. I mean, keep in mind, think of the Marvel cinematic universe that evolved out of Marvel Comics. I'm not saying that the AD&D comics would have ended up that way, but it still could have had a huge impact on the people who would have been brought into D&D as a hobby.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, that's the reason that there are only 36 issues of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons comic book. And as far as the curse that I mentioned, we all know that no longer happens. Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, they never would look at squeezing every last penny out of something. So hopefully the curse is broken and no one will ever suffer from it again. But anyway, I wanted to bring up to you that there was an Advanced Dungeons & Dragons comic book. As a piece of D&D history, I think it's really cool. The comics are an interesting read. You can still find them fairly readily on eBay.
In darn good shape, too. These are...
Well, because I treat everything with kid gloves. But, they are... Anyway, they are really... my set is actually really in pristine condition. But if you get the chance, pick some up and just have a look. Pick one up off of eBay, have a look at it. It's a fun side note to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And again, it kind of reinforces the problem, the story behind it reinforces the problem that D&D property rights owners have had all along, in that they can't see a good thing and let it be a good thing without trying to squeeze that last little bit of money out of whatever situation they happen to find themselves in.
We'll have to see what the future holds for our good friends at Wizards of the Coast.
Anyway, so that's all we have today. If you've ever read or enjoyed the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons comic books, let us know. Yeah. There's some interesting characters. It's kind of a fun thing to go through. A shame that it didn't continue longer than it did, but I guess maybe for me it's a good thing that it didn't keep going, because it allowed me to have a complete set of the comics, which is not something I often get to do. That's all we've got today.
Yeah.
I am Jim.
I am Alex.
Keep your sword on free.
Kickstarter link down below.
Yes. Don't forget our Kickstarter. And a quick shout out to all of our Patreon subscribers.
Yes.
This channel wouldn't even be here at this point if it wasn't for them. We're going to start reading off their names in our next videos, just because we owe them a debt of gratitude.
Yep.
And so thanks to our Patreon people. Again, Kickstarter should be almost live by the time this video comes out. Go have a look at that. You might find something you enjoy. Keep short on free.
Bye-bye.